the thing that caused us to be must be outside of time.
Can I ask you a question?
And yes, of course, in a second.
I just want to
In a
expose
second,
you
in
how
a
hypocrite
second.
you are.
In a second, I'm just addressing
Okay,
this man's question.
I'm
Stop
going
being
to
ignorant
expose
and
you.
rude. This
You
man
be
is
a true
ignorant. This is the
hypocrite.
dawah. This is the
Don't be
dawah.
physical.
This
Don't
is
be
the dawah.
physical.
This is the
Don't
dawah.
touch me. I'm going to
Now,
expose
notice
this
the dawah team,
hypocrite idiot.
how they
I'm going to
behave.
expose him.
So you can expose me now. You can expose me now.
Yeah, yes, I wanted to expose your hypocrisy. The hypocritical level you have.
Go on then. You're gonna.
So your
Tell
two
me that I'm a
points of hypocrisy, you call yourself Christian,
Yes.
which in short meaning follower of Christ, yes. Now, Jesus tells you if he hits you, somebody hits you on the right cheek,
Yes.
offer him the left.
Yes.
I saw your video the other day, you say, if somebody will punch me, I'll punch him back.
Yes.
So isn't that a hypocrisy that you call yourself a follower of Jesus Christ, but you're doing the opposite of what Jesus tells you? That's first point.
Okay, that's the first point.
Second one, I watched another video of yours a few weeks back. You're talking about the slavery.
Yes.
Yeah, Islam, slavery, and you ask Muslims questions.
Yes.
You Muslims, what do you think about the slavery? Is it a good thing or bad thing?
Yes.
And the Muslims say it's not good.
Yeah.
You said your conscience is better than
your
your
book.
Muhammad
Yes.
and Allah.
That's right.
On the other hand, when you come back in Christianity, what has to do with slavery? You say there's no more slavery and you give the verse from I think Timothy, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
Paul says, free the slave. Yeah, I'm paraphrasing. Either free the slave. I can take out the verse if you want. So my question to you is this: when you accuse Muslim that, or you say Muslim, your conscience is better than your God and Muhammad, then why don't you realize the conscience of Paul was better than Jesus and Yahweh? Why? In 31,000 verses, nowhere you find that Jesus or Yahweh abolished slavery. So to me, it's a double standard and it appeals to hypocrisy.
Okay. So my response to that, firstly, let's be clear about what the word hypocrite means and where it comes from.
Oh, right.
Sorry, do you not want to listen to the answer?
I'm not
He's already whinging.
I'm not as educated as you. Now you're going to play around the word of hypocrisy.
No. So, firstly, let's just be clear. I'm quite happy to admit on camera.
I can open the dictionary. I'm not as educated as you.
There are times when in my life I fall into hypocrisy. I'm a human being and I'm sinful.
Last week, you mean.
So if you can shut up for a second and just let me speak, Abbas. Yeah. So in terms of the hypocrite, Hippocrates is where the word comes from. It's Greek, and it was a term for theatre. Hippocrates was a mask that an actor would wear to demonstrate they're containing one persona over another. So a hypocrite is someone who pretends to be one thing whilst being something else. Now, I publicly just admitted that there are times in my life where I fall into hypocrisy. I've publicly admitted there are times in my life where I sin, and I still do. So, I don't think that there is an equivalence between hypocrisy and not being perfect. Someone who is addicted to any kind of drug may recognize at an intellectual level it would be better for their life to be free of the addiction without being able to be so. That doesn't make them a hypocrite, it just makes them imperfect. Now, to address the allegations directly, not that I'm particularly concerned about ego, but let's just talk about my understanding of the faith, since that's been what's brought up. Christ talks about turning the other cheek. Christ himself, when he was slapped on the cheek, he didn't turn the other cheek.
I was going to bring
Christ himself did not do that. Christ himself turned to his slappers and said, "Why do you slap me?" In other words, he challenged the people that slapped him. He didn't just take it and go, "Oh, slap me on this one as well." So Christ himself, who went into the temple and fashioned a cord of whips and then used those whips in the temple to drive out the money changers, was not a pacifist. This phrase, turn the other cheek, was hyperbole in Scripture, and it's part of a whole bunch of hyperbole phrases. It was a common trait of Christ's teaching to use hyperbole, as in, you take an extreme example to demonstrate your point. The point is not to take the extreme example as literal, but to understand the point that Christ is making. Christ, for instance, commands that a man should rip out his eye and cut off his hand. I don't think Abbas is going to stand here and say Christians should do that literally, and I've never been in a church that says you should. Why? It's because hyperbole. Well, you can correct me in your turn. It's hyperbole. Why? Because Christ is making a point that if your eye causes you to sin, that if something is causing you to sin, take it out of your life. It's a radical form of discipleship. That's what it calls you to do. So an example would be, if you can't use the internet responsibly, get rid of the internet. So that's the kind of thing that Christ is teaching. When he says turn the other cheek, he's not being literal. He's not saying be a pacifist. What he is saying, though, is don't allow your heart to be governed by revenge. That is what he's saying. So it's not hypocrisy to understand Jesus' correct and proper teaching. Now, as understood by the church, just for your information, Abbas, for 2,000 years. So, what was the other point you accused me of hypocrisy for? Slavery.
Slavery, yeah.
Slavery.
Yeah.
So, the fact of the matter is that the Christian faith, precisely because of the teachings of the apostles and the prophets, which is what our faith is built upon, Christ himself being the cornerstone and the church being the pillar of the truth, has taught that slaves should pursue their freedom whenever they can, that slaves who are Christians should be treated not as slaves but as brothers, and that those who take slaves, kidnap people to take them as slaves, are listed amongst those who go to hell. Now, with that basis, the early Christian church fought against Roman slavery. And this is centuries before Muhammad. Centuries. And by the 5th century, slavery had all but been abolished in the Roman Empire. By the 14th century, slavery had all but been abolished in Europe.
Not my query.
That is no.
Off topic.
No, I'm talking about slavery.
No, we are not talking about slavery.
He's accusing me of hypocrisy.
Your double standard,
because
how you
in
Islam, you're going off topic.
In Islam, slavery is codified in the Sharia. So now let me ask you a question: is the buying, the selling, the treatment, and the freeing of slaves codified within Sharia?
You're going off topic. Look, remember what I said to you. You asked Muslims, do you think slavery is good?
Yes.
And they say no. Then you said, you made a point on that, you build your argument on that. You say your conscience is better than your book, than your God and Muhammad.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what he said. But then later on, you told us in the Bible teaches us not to have slaves, free them. And who you quote? Paul.
Yes.
So my question is this: why you didn't quote Jesus or Yahweh?
Yes.
That what Paul says, abolishing the slavery. Why you didn't quote them? Because there is no.
Oh, you answering the question now?
Yes, I am.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were asking me a question.
Then you can refute.
Yeah, of course.
You can refute me. You can refute me.
Of course.
This is what my understanding is. If I'm wrong, correct me. Because there's nowhere in the Bible Yahweh or Jesus abolished the slavery. So according to your standards, since Muslims have better conscience than Muhammad and Allah, then Paul has better conscience than Jesus and Yahweh. Yep. You must unless you agree with that. If you don't, then you're a hypocrite. That's a double standard.
Okay, so allow me to refute this point, because Muslims, particularly members of the Dawah team like Abbas,
Thank you very much. I'm proud to be a Dawah team member.
I know you are.
It's all
all the time. Always misrepresent the Christian faith.
They give us
They strawman the Christian faith. They mischaracterize the Christian faith. Because the Christian faith is built upon the teachings of the apostles and the prophets. The prophets point to Christ. The apostles, as N.T. Wright would describe Paul, are the first interpreters of Christ. The Christian faith does not make a distinction between Christ's teaching and the apostles' teaching. The apostles' teaching is the correct continuation, the interpretation of Christ's life, death, resurrection, and ascension. That is how the Christian faith works. So I have no problems accepting Paul's teaching. Paul's teaching is authoritative to me, as are all the teachings of all the apostles. Now, in terms of these kind of arguments that I've had with Muslims, if you would listen to those debates carefully, and I think you probably did, you would also know that one of the key verses that I use to construct my argument is Christ's teaching about do unto others what you would have do unto them. Now, would you agree that that is Christ's teaching?
According to the Bible, yes.
Right. Now, if I am following that maxim, since I don't want to be made a slave, does it follow that I should oppose those ideologies that make for slaves?
You can make that argument, but what I'm saying is why Christ didn't say it plainly, like Paul said it.
I am going to ask you again.
That can have many different meanings.
You know,
that could have a context.
Abbas,
when Jesus says that, there may be a context.
Abbas, of course there was a context.
Yes.
Of course there was a context.
You can't really generalize.
The context was this, that someone came up to Christ and they said, good teacher, what was the question? Which is the greatest commandment? And Christ said that you should love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your mind, with all your strength, and you should love your neighbor as yourself. And then the guy says, and then tell me, good teacher, who is my neighbor? That's the context. Now, Christ's teaching, love your neighbor as you love yourself, flows into the teaching of do unto others what you would have do unto them.
Don't play this love
It's
thing.
not, it's
Because
not.
if you're going to bring love,
No, notice.
I'm going to bring hate
Notice,
in the Bible.
notice.
Don't do that.
Notice, Abbas wants to confine the structure of the debate to
You
suit
are the
his
one.
argument.
You're bringing everything into
I am
love.
bringing my faith into it because that's what's being inquired of. Now, I'll ask you again. Is it logical? Is it a logical flowing out of that if I live by the principle that I should do unto Abbas what I would want Abbas to do unto me, that if I do not want to be made a slave, I should oppose those who want to make Abbas a
No,
slave?
you can't generalize it. No,
You don't agree that that follows? You don't think that follows?
You're generalizing it.
How would you
generalizing.
interpret this? So you give me, how would you interpret do unto you? How would you interpret that?
You're going off topic right now.
No, I'm not.
No.